Have you ever wondered what happens when the American dream just stops? When it turns into a national nightmare seemingly overnight? Well, today we're going to dive into one of the toughest, most important periods in American history, the Great Depression. This wasn't just an economic downturn, it was a crisis that completely reshaped the entire country.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the incredible highs of the Roaring '20s, right before everything came crashing down. Then, we'll see how the country was plunged into a deep crisis. After that, we'll explore FDR's ambitious New Deal, check out how people managed to get by in such hard times, and finally, we'll trace that long, slow path to recovery.
All right, so how on earth does a nation go from soaring prosperity to hitting rock bottom? It's a great question. And to really get the crash, you've got to understand the boom that came right before it. I mean, in the late 1920s, America felt like it was on top of the world, riding this incredible wave of optimism.
People call them the Roaring '20s for a reason, right? The economy was on fire. It felt like everyone was making money. It really seemed like the party would go on forever. But then, 1929 happened, and we're not talking a small dip in the market. We're talking a full-on, catastrophic crash. The entire economy just fell off a cliff. The party was over. Big time.
You know, it's kind of funny we call it the Great Depression, isn't it? Because great usually means, well, good. But that's not what it meant here, not at all. It was great as in massive, huge, immense, because the scale of this thing was just devastating. As this quote says, it was absolutely ruinous for millions and millions of people.
And that's what we're going to talk about now, the human cost of it all. Because, it's easy to get lost in the stock market charts, but behind every single data point was a real person, a real family, whose entire world was just collapsing. Okay, get ready for this number. By March of 1933, the official count of unemployed Americans was 13 million. Just let that sink in for a second. 13 million. And the crazy part is, that number was probably way higher. It didn't even include lots of married women who were let go, or all the folks who had their hours cut down to almost nothing. It's just a truly staggering figure.
And see, this wasn't just about losing your job. This was a total system meltdown. It was like a chain of dominoes falling one after the other. First, the banks started to fail. Poof! People's life savings just vanished. With no money, they couldn't pay their mortgages, so they lost their homes, their farms. The only option for so many was the long line at a soup kitchen. And as you can imagine, people were desperate, and they were angry. And they pointed that anger right at President Herbert Hoover.
And if you want a perfect symbol of that anger, look no further than the Hoovervilles. Can you picture it? These were whole communities of homeless people living in shacks they built themselves from cardboard boxes and whatever scrap they could find. And calling them Hoovervilles? That was a direct, bitter jab at the president. They popped up all over the country and became this powerful visual symbol of just how bad things had gotten.
And just when you think, okay, it can't possibly get any worse, it did. Nature decided to pile on. A terrible drought hit the southern plains. We're talking huge, choking dust storms. They called it the Dust Bowl, that just buried farms and turned fertile land into desert. This kicked off a whole new tragedy: Dust Bowl refugees. Thousands of families had to pack up what little they had left and head west to California, just trying to survive.
But right in the middle of all this darkness and despair, a little bit of light started to peek through. A change was on the horizon. In 1933, a new president was elected, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, and he came in with a message that was exactly what the country needed to hear: a promise to do something, a promise of bold, direct action.
And that plan for action? It was called the New Deal. And listen, this wasn't just a few new laws. This was a total game changer, a complete shift in how America thought about the government's job. For the very first time, the federal government was stepping in and saying, okay, we're going to take an active role here. We're going to try to fix the economy and help people's lives directly. Now, the New Deal was this huge umbrella of different programs, but one of the absolute biggest and most important was called the Works Progress Administration, the WPA for short. And its mission was super simple, super direct: put Americans back to work, period. And the impact of the WPA was enormous. 1. It created jobs, over 3.5 million of them. 2. Those people weren't just digging ditches, they were building the country. We're talking over 500,000 miles of roads, 150,000 schools, parks, you name it. And 3, which is really cool, it even sponsored artists and musicians because they knew lifting the country's spirit was important too. So it wasn't a handout, right? It was a hand up,
that literally rebuilt America.
So while the government was rolling out these big programs, what were regular folks doing to get by? Well, they were finding their own ways to cope. And honestly, it's pretty incredible to see the resilience and creativity people showed. They found these small but vital ways to escape the misery of daily life.
This era actually became the golden age of radio. You'd have whole families gathered around listening to shows together. People would scrape together a few cents to go to the movies and just get lost in another world for a while. Even simple stuff like roller skating became a huge deal. And get this for irony, the board game Monopoly, the one all about buying property and getting rich, it was invented during the Depression and was a runaway hit. Talk about escapism.
Okay, so you've got the New Deal starting to work, and you've got the American people pushing through. The country is finally on the road to recovery. But, and this is a really important but, this was not a quick fix. This was a long, slow climb out of a very deep hole.
And this timeline really drives that point home. Look at this. The crash happens in 29. FDR and the New Deal bring a glimmer of hope in 33. But the country doesn't really truly pull out of this thing until 1941. That's 12 years. A dozen years of hardship. And of course, something else happened in 1941 that would change the world all over again.
And that brings us to a really key takeaway here. The New Deal, it was absolutely crucial. It provided relief, it started the recovery, but what really, truly ended the Great Depression? Most historians agree it was World War II. The massive industrial boom required for the war effort, that's what finally kicked the economy into high gear and put the entire nation back to work.
So we end with this question to think about. How did this era change America forever? Because it really did. Everything from our relationship with the government to the financial safeguards we now take for granted, it all has roots in this period. It was a time of immense suffering, no doubt about it, but it was also a time of profound transformation, a transformation that continues to shape the America we live in today.